here in the Diocese of San Diego, the Catholic Diocese of San Diego. And we come under our Office of Life, Peace, and Justice. This is the office that does a lot of our social concerns and ministry work to our Catholic population. We are very honored and happy to get to participate with the ICEJ as an interfaith partner here in San Diego, working on the topic of the environment and care for creation. Today, we are really excited to have Bob Gilleskie come and talk about the question of equity. This ties in largely to a lot of our environmental dynamics. We know that, like, for example, the flooding that we just had, it impacted our South Bay area more so than the rest of San Diego. Some of that is because of infrastructure, but then you add the ability to adapt either because you have insurance or you have means or you have the wherewithal or the know-how or the time off from work or whatever that is, your ability to adapt to those circumstances is drastically changed based on your vulnerability. And a lot of that stems from your place in society and how much equity, you are able to enjoy. So Bob has taught a lot on this topic. It is a key area of leadership. Bob is a Naval Academy graduate from 1968. Then he was a surface warfare officer. He went on to work as an engineer. He has his PE, is that professional engineer, right? Professional engineer certification, having worked with the facilities management on naval bases and Marine Corps bases, and then also career with SDG&E. So he knows the inner workings of energy and power and how those dynamics really play out for people, and then is able to kind of take that leadership experience, especially from his Navy time, and apply that in a way that enables him to really see how equity is something that leaders can address and how they can make a difference. So Bob is one of our key volunteers on my diocesan team, and I am very honored to have him, very grateful to have him, and I hope that you all will enjoy this presentation.
Thank you, Christine. Good afternoon, and welcome to this workshop on compassionate leadership. As we go on, you'll get an idea why I chose the word compassionate leadership. What I'd like to do today is, first of all, talk a little bit about social equity, what it is, what's the components, and we'll see it's part of something called sustainable development. I'll go into that in a moment. And then I'll talk a little bit about leadership, because that's what this thing is about. I remember a number of years ago, I remember exactly where I was in my neighborhood taking a walk. And oh, I'm sorry. Maybe they don't want to see me, Phil. Anyway, I remember taking a walk in my neighborhood, and I've taught courses in sustainable development for 25 years, I guess. And I said to myself, well, what can I have to offer that's different? And dawned on me, as Christina mentioned, I was a naval officer at one time. I worked in a number of different places in various leadership positions. And I said, that's it. And that's why that was the motivation for my first book, which I'll refer back to a little bit, because that's where I lay out the characteristics of leadership. Then we're going to take the last part of this. I'm going to, first of all, do some examples, show you real life examples, historical examples where leaders showed compassion in its areas of social equity. And then finally, the second half of the workshop is going to be breakouts. And my friend Phil will organize that mostly as far as setting up the breakout sessions, both online, Zoom, and as well as here. And oh, before I forget, do not hesitate to ask me questions during this. I like to be interrupted. When I teach, that at least ensures people are engaged. And you don't have to, but if you have a question, well, there'll be Q&A at the end. But if you want to answer a question, by all means, Bob, shut up. I got a question. Okay, social equity and sustainable development. As I mentioned, social equity is a component of sustainable development. You see the definition there. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this term, but the Brundtland Commission, which was a UN commission back in 1987, came up with this definition. That sustainable development is that which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That's critical to what we're talking about. You know, people talk about climate change, and I always like to hear them say, well, we're doing this because of our kids. I've got 4 grandkids, and that's the thing. There's future generations. They're going to inherit whatever we leave them. I 4 grandchildren now. The first edition of the book was James, Henry, and Eloise. Since then, Will has been born. He has my middle name. And so that's part of the revision of the first book. Okay, then the elements of sustainable development. The environment, economics, and social equity. The environment speaks for itself. It's basically, right now, it's climate change, but it's all these other aspects, water, how we use renewable energy or not, and it's all these issues pertaining to the environment around us. As Christina mentioned, she heads up our creation care ministry with the diocese, and a lot of it's about the environment, our creation, if you will. Economics. They've chosen the name here for the second element, but I choose to look at it as the way we make things, use things, get rid of things, which begs for recycling. That's the aspect here. And the last part, and for years, it was always the last part, social equity. This right here is basically how we treat people. And today you're going to see every element of the social equity issues has to do with how we treat people. Now, that said, social equity is actually the most needful of these 3 elements. How we treat people, which implies how we manage people. I don't like manage people. We don't manage people, we lead people, because you're going to see a very significant component of leadership is getting them to want what you want. And I'll get into that in a moment. Okay, let's talk about the social equity issues. By the way, when we do the breakouts later on, we're going to ask people to pick one of the social equity issues and discuss it and come up with ways where we can implement solutions, if you will. Hopefully, this is all about solutions. The first, one of the most significant social equity issues we have today is racism. We've had this issue in our country for hundreds of years. And if you look at it for a second, there are 4 different components, 2 at the micro level and 2 at the macro level. On the micro level, it's the internalized racism. Let's face it, everybody has a fear of the unknown. You're walking down the street, and you might see a Black person or a Hispanic person at the end of the head. Maybe you're a little concerned. Everybody's internalized a little bit of racism. You have to remind yourself they're children of God. They're part of this creation. The other part is interpersonal. How we react with others. That determines so much on how we react, the aspects of race. And then we have the macro level, the larger levels. Unfortunately, this is still with us. Institutional racism, our Justice Department, our hospitals, our educational system, they all have smacks of racism. And so that's something we should realize. And then we have structural racism. Things that are in our society that are actually part of the way we do things. I was trying to think of examples. And one, does everybody know what the term redlining means? Probably so. Redlining was a nasty habit our country had, and I think some places still effectively have redlining, where they take their zones and they make it so that certain people of color can't move in here. And that was done as recently as 50, 60 years ago. I remember, talk about how far we've come. When I was in high school, when I was in grade school, my brother played football at North Carolina State. And we'd go down, I'd take the bus down from Pittsburgh to Raleigh, and I'd stop in Washington, D.C. And I remember getting a drink of water. And believe me, this was in 61, 62, for whites only, for Blacks only. That is structural racism in our society. Fortunately, we're beyond that. I don't think that exists anymore. Okay, so racism is a large issue. It's still with us. We have a lot of challenges, and I think most of these challenges can be met with effective leadership. The second one is homelessness. Homelessness, we in San Diego, we have this issue. We have this issue in in Southern California, if you're going to be homeless, it's a good place to be homeless. I don't want anybody to be homeless, but we have an issue in California. We have an issue in San Diego. But, you know, nationally, we're not the worst. It's hard to see the print here. I'll translate for you. France has got a greater number. These are numbers per 100,000 population. They have somewhere in 216, 236 per 100,000 people. So they're the most. And then we come in. We're about 178. So we're pretty high up on the list. It goes all the way down to Portugal, which is only about 20. So we're doing a lot of, I hope we're doing a lot of good things. I know we're addressing it in San Diego, and I know the state's looking at it. These are issues you've got to realize what people go through. In my book, and by the way, I don't know if we've done it yet, but you're welcome to a PDF of the book that's behind us. It's called Lighting the Way, Compassionate Leadership in Sustainable Development. You're welcome to that. It's in publishing now, but you're welcome to the PDF if you want. It'll go into more detail, things I talk about. Hunger. This is an issue, especially, it's hard for us to imagine how other people in this country, in this world, go hungry, but they do. Look at this chart there. Far left, worldwide, we got almost 30% of people that are hungry. They're lacking food. And almost 10% severe hunger. That means you see children with distended bellies. This right here is heartbreaking. You know, we're seeing, especially with the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, you see kids, they're not getting enough to eat. Now, that's just exceptions now, but that happens in society. Go all the way to the right, high-income countries. We still have 10% of the people that go hungry. Isn't that hard to believe? And then we have, it's not a 3%, severe hunger. People really can't exist, and they go hungry. Somewhere in the middle, you can see the varying between that. It exists everywhere. And it's unfortunate this day and age that we have to work to find ways to feed people. Poverty and income inequality. I go into, again, I have a chapter in the book on each of these issues right here. It goes into much more detail, but this graph here shows you where we are. I was astounded when I saw this. You know, we have like 20% of our children live in poverty. I mean, we live in San Diego. It's a great place to live. And you might see some of this in East San Diego, but there are parts of the country where 20%, in fact, we have, except for Chile and Turkey, we're the highest of all these countries. You know, in a lot of the stats I've seen in my book, looking at any of these issues, and I'll point out some in healthcare, it's interesting that the Scandinavian countries all do very well. Right here, the lowest on the list is about 3% of the children in poverty. But they're doing some things. We can look to them for guidance on a lot of issues. Okay, the next social equity issue, and like I said, try to keep in mind these right here, because when you do your breakout, you remember you can pick one of these. Social environmental justice. This graph, I was surprised, to tell you the truth. You see the left bar there is Latina or Hispanics. They are exposed to 63% more pollution than they generate. And this doesn't make sense until you think of people live up near Long Beach, maybe, with all the refineries, or people living outside of Houston, where you have all the refineries right there. The property's cheaper. You have a lot of lower income people. They're exposed to 63% more pollution than they generate themselves. Black people, it's 56% for the same reasons. They have to live where they can afford it. And very often it's near a refinery, near something where there's a lot of air pollution. And then far right, we're doing all right. If you're a white person, you're doing okay. They're exposed to 17% less pollution than what they generate. Tragic, but this is what we're faced with. We're looking for ways to change things. And by the way, when we get to the breakouts, well, how might we change this? I don't know. It's a leadership issue. I didn't mention earlier, but when we talk about leadership, there's 3 different levels. Government, that's one you'd expect. And we'll get into this a little bit more in leadership. Government, because that's where you expect your leaders to be doing things. Then you have businesses and organizations. I was a little bit surprised while I was doing the research for this book where Disneyland in Florida is, they're doing the right thing with regard, they have a very unique healthcare system right there where they are actually doing leadership and they run into opposition from the government there, but they're doing the right thing. That's a business or organization that's doing things that are right with regard to leadership. The final one, and I tacked it on there, maybe the most important, individuals. Every one of us have things to do in our everyday life where we can create an effect, where we can actually show leadership in some aspect. Immigration. This is going to be the #1 issue in the election this year in California, in the country. But you know, we have immigration, refugees, asylum seekers in Ukraine. People are displaced. They're displaced already in Syria. They've been there in the civil war in the last 15 years. They've all these people coming over from Africa, over in a rickety boat. When was it? About a year ago, where a boat capsized and I think 100 people drowned trying to get to Florida or trying to get to Italy from the Middle East. And it's a critical issue. What we see every day is our borders. Some people make more of an issue than it should be, but it's a political issue. Unfortunately, it's going to be the #1 election issue. If you look at the bar chart, you'll see the bars there show the total number of worldwide migrants. We're approaching 300,000 that's a percentage there. It's about a little over 3% of the worldwide population are migrants. They're forced out of their homes for a lot of reasons. Climate change, they have war, they have, in Central America, bad government. There's a lot of reasons why, if you're in Central America, if you're in Ecuador, San Salvador, Nicaragua, you're willing to walk 1,000 miles from there to our border. There's something wrong there. It must be really bad there. They're not just doing it because they want to get go to Disneyland. No, they're coming here because they either fear their government or their economy is so bad they're willing to take that trek. A couple of weeks ago, we had a mother and her daughter drowned in the Rio Grande because it's so important that they get to this country. So immigration, refugees, it's much more than what we have at our borders. It's a significant issue there, but other places in the world are almost as significant. This right here astounded me. When I got to chapter 8 or chapter 9 in my book, it's on health and healthcare. I found this graph here. By the way, you can look at all of these. These are sourced. It's not Bob. It's Bob talking, but it's not Bob with the original idea. But if you look at it, that top blue line is the life expectancy when you're born from.
I'm just going to move this for a second so they can see the last bit of that graph.
Good idea. Good idea. Thank you, Christina.
For that one.
Thank you. That top blue line is the life expectancy if you were in from the years 1980 up until the present time. I don't show it on there, but the original source showed that's about 82 years. So if you're born anytime in one of those years between 1980 up until the present time, you can expect to live 82 years. Now, that green line there is life expectancy in the United States, 76 years. Does that surprise anybody? I was shocked when I saw this. I had to go back and check my shares. There are reasons for this. Drug abuse is a big one. Drug abuse in our country. You have drug abuse all over the world, but we have a real issue here. Fentanyl. That's I've got a very good friend. Her son, 28 years old, San Diego State graduate, doing well. Somebody tricked him one night. He took a drug and it was laced with fentanyl. He died. I mean, he college graduate, smart guy and everything, and Gina was heartbroken. It's just, but there are the reasons. Obesity is another one in our country. There maternal care in our country right now. All of these right here, we compare worse than the rest of the world. And yet we spend the most as a percentage of our GDP. That's tragic. Here we need leadership in our government. Bernie Sanders, I don't know I don't want to get political, but he, I don't think I gave him an example in the book as far as being an advocate for universal health care. Bernie Sanders, he's passionate about it. This has to be started. One of the main reasons here is our lack of universal health care. That's going to happen eventually. As sure as Bob's standing up here ranting, we're going to have it. We're going to have it someday. It's just a matter of time before we do, but it is a matter of leadership, and that's what it'll take. Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I've said enough about the social equity issues. Let's talk about leadership for a little bit. As I mentioned earlier, when I was walking through my neighborhood, Bob, what can you add to this issue of sustainable development that hasn't been said already? Oh, okay, I was a naval officer at one time. I worked for profit and nonprofits afterward, and that's it. Why don't I talk about leadership? So I got, as everybody would do, I got on the internet and I looked up leadership. You'll get a lot of definitions for leadership. One especially appealed to me by General Dwight Eisenhower. He said that leadership is the art of getting someone else to do what you want done because he wants to do it. He or she wants to do it. That struck me. And you see, there's a reason there why I put in red once, because anybody can get anybody else to do something. If you say the right things, they'll do it for a little bit. If you want to do it on long term, you have to want to do it. This especially appeals for climate change. I mean, we can do a lot of things. You can put solar panels up, you can drive an EV, you can do all these things. But if you're going to do something long term, you have to want to do it. And that's one of our main missions, both at our Creation Care Ministry and Phil's Interfaith Coalition for Earth Justice, is to get people to look seriously at climate change. I can't emphasize enough what a challenge that is. You have so many people. My own church, I won't mention it, but they will get people. It's a fairly affluent parish, and people don't want to talk about it. That's just the way it is. And so we have to find a way to do it. So I got this definition based on my experience in the military, business, and nonprofits. I've always had, and even more so now, something I like to do. I like to watch people, and especially in the military. In Vietnam, I worked for several different commanding officers, and I saw ones that were really impressive, others weren't, and that added to my cornucopia of things what makes a good leader. So I took these characteristics, which I'll go into in a moment, and I'll spend a little bit of time doing that. But when I decided on these, I got on the internet and as everybody would do, and looked, does this make any sense? Has it been proven? Has it been validated? Is there ways you can develop it? I came up with these leadership characteristics, and I'll go into this a little bit more when I pick some examples. Communication, both verbal and in writing. Vision, looking to the future, seeing what could be there, what should be there. A positive attitude. You have to actually believe that this is going to happen if you want to make it happen. Presence. Another example, this is definition is charisma. And I'll go into some explanation of it. Responsibility. Responsibility, in short, means doing the right thing when nobody's looking. You know, I look back, and my father taught me a few things, but one of the few things that stuck with me is I was out playing ball. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old, and I broke a neighbor's window and came back, Dad, I did this. What should I do? And my dad was a steel worker. He had big hands. I remember this day, my dad said, will you go back and tell him what you did? And I did, but that stuck with me after 60, 70 years, that's what you have to do. You have to own up to what you're doing. You have to try to do the right thing. And that's the essence of responsibility. Respect. You have to treat everybody. We are all part of God's creation. We're all interconnected. If for no other reason, we owe this respect to other people. And by the way, I'm going to have examples of these shortly. Empathy. Empathy means a little bit more than compassion. That it is part of compassion, but empathy means you're willing to do something that reflects your compassion for something. You want to do something. In this case, we're talking about being a leader and getting things done. Now, all these examples and the main criteria I had for choosing them was they were designed to encourage, foster, inspire, create, want. I mean, you're not going to guarantee it, but these things here I've chosen to have that effect. Communication. You want to say the right things in order to make people do what you want to do. Secondly, in this really, this has been pointed out, they can be developed. You've heard the expression, leaders are born, not made. They're both. We're fortunate to have leaders that are born, that we've had, and I think that's wonderful, but they all can't be born leaders. But the good news is, and I saw this, and I got a whole section of my library at home is leadership books. And invariably, they show ways where you can develop these things. And again, it's in my first book, and a lot of quotes on things that business has shown that their profits be increased. They can have better employees. They can have a better situation where people develop these leadership capabilities. What's more, there's exercises available. I was a little bit astounded when I read this. It said, do this. There are a number of people came out, a lot of bright people came out and said, well, if you want to develop leadership, do this, 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 this. And I'll give you one on a respect one. I probably won't go into it later on, but respect. One of the ways you can hone your ability to be respectful, when you're talking to somebody, make sure you keep eye contact. I know we all falter on this. We're going to find ourselves looking somewhere else, but you get in a habit of looking people in the eye. You can see that you respect their ability to be there. So again, another one. I'll give you another example. A number of years ago, my daughter, she was in college. I would proof her papers. I did this through high school and through Duke. And I sent her an email one day, and she didn't get back to me. I chastised Sarah. Sarah, you didn't answer my email. And she was taken aback a bit, but she answers my emails now. One of the ways you can improve a very simple thing, Patricia and I had this discussion yesterday. One of the ways you can hone your respectful attitude, get an email, don't blow it off. You blow it off, you know what that means? That means I don't have the time to answer your email. I don't answer all in detail, but yeah, got it. Get back to you later. Very simple thing to do. A way to develop your respectful attitude. Okay, the last one here is empathy. As I mentioned earlier, empathy is compassion, but it goes beyond that. It means you have compassion, and yet you're willing to do something to encourage empathy, to play on your empathy. And like I said, these things can be developed. I'm happy with my first book because I show all these issues. And I was talking to Sarah yesterday, Sarah and Eric. I said, Sarah, when I go on, please make sure that James, Henry, Eloise, and Will read my books because there's a third one coming. And I'm going to leave that to them. And she said, okay, Dad. And I'm sure she will. They'll read it. And so there are ways you can develop these leadership characteristics. And again, I mentioned earlier, it's applicable in 3 areas. And when you do your breakouts, you might choose either government, business, or individual. By the way, they can overlap. Like I said, Bernie Sanders is an individual, but he also works in the government. But with regard to healthcare, he's probably the best person to listen to, passionate. Okay, let's talk about some historical examples. People that, by the way, if you disagree with Bob doesn't know everything. Just let me know. But I got some examples here. Abraham Lincoln, he just did a study just last week, the best American presidents. And I think everybody would not be surprised that Abraham Lincoln was at the top of the list. He is known as being the first American president for a lot of reasons, but some childhood experiences he had sort of foresaw what a great president he would be. You know, when he'd be with some of his buddies, that'd be long. A favorite game of theirs was to be hot coals on tortoises. Cruel, yes. But Abraham Lincoln refused to do it. He also was looking that's an animal. I'm not going to be a part of that. Also, with the same friends, walking along one day, they saw a pig stuck in the mud. They all just walked by, but Abraham Lincoln went back and he helped the pig out of the mud. So that foretold what he was going to be as a leader. Especially, it pained him greatly to send Union soldiers off to war, I'm sure. But he was a successful president largely because of his compassionate leadership. Nelson Mandela. Doing research on this, I was a little bit surprised. Yeah, he was like certainly the first Black president of South Africa. Very successful with that. Now they're having some hard times, but I did a little bit of reading on it, and I didn't see this until this one figure. He had a son that died of AIDS. I didn't. Did anybody know that? He became a very strong advocate of the people stricken with AIDS. Again, that came from something deep in his heart that he believed in compassion. He also founded the Children's Fund for Homeless. A lot of things in Nelson Mandela. I was always impressed by the fact that he could spend 20 years in prison. And when he got out, he forgave the people that would have been in prison, and he became one of the greatest, certainly one of the greatest presidents of South Africa ever had. So he is a good example of compassionate leadership. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, very, very successful, not only successful woman, but successful member of the Supreme Court. She was raised in Brooklyn. She wasn't exposed very much to anti-Semitic treatment, except they were on a road trip one day, I think in Pennsylvania, and she said, "No Jews allowed." That struck her as something really wrong. And so she made it her passion to defend the downtrodden in the coming years. She did very well in law school, graduated near the top. She could not get a job afterward. She could not get a job because she was a woman. She eventually did. She got some positions, and she got people's attention. And one of the biggest defenders of women's rights ever to come along, but not just women's rights. There was another case came before the Supreme Court where a man could not get he was a widower, and he could not get what a widow usually receives because he was a man, and a man wouldn't do that. But no, she pressed that, and they won. They got men the same rights as women. So she wasn't just a one-trick pony. She did an awful lot. She's going to be sorely missed by, well, she is right now, and she always will. Has anybody heard of Dietrich Bonhoeffer? I know Father has, and Christina has, and Tom has. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Lutheran priest in Germany during the Second World War. Very passionate man. And he was fortunate to get a position in government because of one of his relatives. He was in government, and actually he was able to help Jews get out of Germany because of that position. And eventually there was a big investigation on who people tried to assassinate Hitler. And by the way, I got a lot of this information from the movie Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It's on Amazon, I believe. Very, very, very touching, especially where he was executed at the end. They hung him, and he was willing to do all this. He wrote a lot. He was very passionate about what he believed, but he died for what he wanted to do out of his compassion for the Jewish people. Something I don't have on there, I want to add a couple more. Has anybody heard of Malala Yousafzai? Malala Yousafzai, if you remember, about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, was a young Pakistani woman, and she believed that women should be able to get education, and she fought for that. She fought for that, and their father encouraged her. She did this so much under the threat of the Taliban in Pakistan. And she did this. She was successful. She was the youngest Nobel Prize winner, Peace Prize ever. And she was very successful doing this. She had that strong passion, belief in education for women. And so she pushed it. How about this one? Harriet Tubman. Has anybody heard of Harriet Tubman? Aside from the fact that, isn't she going to be on some currency, I think? Harriet Tubman was a young Black woman during the Civil War who made it her mission to get slaves up north on the Underground Railroad. She got hundreds out of the South going up north. And then she did a whole lot after she was after the war. One incident was interesting, that she was in a store one day, and one of the slave owners threw a 2-pound rock at another slave, and she brushed him aside, but she got hit. So she had this brain injury where the rest of her life she had headaches and all this, but she did these things. She was so passionate about what she believed in and what she did that she was able to continue that.
Bob, I don't know if
Please.
you saw the movie. I didn't know until I watched that movie that then she led a troop in battle in the Civil War.
Yeah.
Also, so I did not know that part about her.
What an amazing woman. Yeah, I find
spiritual, like extremely spiritual as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Interesting, but working with Creation Care and Christina and Father Emmett the past few years, I get even more an appreciation for people. They are part of creation. I mean, it's a wonderful thing that we're here and we can do what we do. And I find it fascinating to look at people like Harriet Tubman, Malala Yousafzai, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. That's part of creation. Anyway, okay. Now, this probably goes to the heart of what we want to do today. What I've done was taken each of these leadership characteristics and I picked people throughout history that could that exemplified good things that we've exemplified leadership. Communication, right away, Martin Luther King comes to mind. I have a dream speech that influenced more people. We gave this in August of 1963 at the Lincoln Memorial, and the impact it has had on it. In fact, I think that might be where it became so obvious that he was an advocate of nonviolent opposition. As far as he influenced so many people, a lot of reasons. It's beautiful. You hear that? I have a dream. I mean, people think of that often. Inspire generations to come. The importance of treating people fairly. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. The effectiveness, there's a source there. Well, Forbes magazine pointed out one year as far as why this speech stuck with us. Symbolism. This hallowed spot, talking about at the Lincoln Memorial, or let freedom ring. These are the things that stuck with us. Rhythmic, the lyrical repetition. Now is the time. I have a dream. This is just so important. It goes back to the issue of communication. How do you get people to believe in what you're doing? How do you get them to want the same things you want? Vision, plan for nonviolence. He showed the vision right there. This is communicating. This is the aspect of verbal communication. He's given a lot of speeches, but the one that sticks out always is I have a dream. Communication, written communication. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention here communication. It's hard to talk about verbal communication and leaders without thinking of Ronald Reagan. That was Ronald Reagan's strongest reason why he was Patricia, tell me. Oh, yeah, that's right. Good point. Take down that wall, but a lot of other things. And I thought of this only this morning when I was going through this, but he advocated and had passed amnesty for people living in the United States. And again, I'm not a great fan of Ronald Reagan, but I do. As far as a communicator, there was very few as good as he was. Very, very effective. Thank you. Take down that wall.
Montreal Protocol.
Montreal, was he behind it?
Yeah, he led. I mean, he was the leader for that. And when the United States leads environmental action at the global level,
that's right. I didn't know the Montreal Protocol, if in case nobody knows what it was, that was the legislation, that was the agreement among nations not to destroy the ozone layer by not having these gases into the environment. I didn't know Reagan was behind that. That's good. Well,
at least he didn't stop it from happening,
Yeah. Well,
it was like,
super
yeah, storming the barricade, but he definitely, as opposed to maybe our climate change experience.
I didn't know that. Thanks for pointing that out. Well, Richard Nixon was the president when the EPA was developed, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act. These were different times, and I give him a lot of credit for that. Some other things not so good. Okay, communications written. I think everybody going to school, when you talk about inspiring written communication, you probably run across the Gettysburg Address. 270 words. That's not very much. That's one sheet of paper, typewritten paper, actually. But the effect it has had, probably, like I said, most people tell me the most effective written communication you can think of. It's like, oh, yeah, the Gettysburg Address. A lot of reasons for that. And they're listed in this source, Course Hero. Why is this so effective? Archaic language. He could have said 87 years ago, but no, it's not much better to say 77 years ago. That's stuck with people. Call to action. It was all about implementing the Declaration of Independence. That was something that grabbed people. Contrast, the living and the dead there in Gettysburg Cemetery. Add or detract. Add to these words or detract from them. That gets people's attention. Euphemism, final resting place. Boy, that rings true for so many people. This was at a cemetery. Inclusive language. Throughout the speech, he talks about our fathers. We are engaged in a great civil war. This grabs people, makes them part of it. Remember, the goal here is to make people want to do these things. And if you can show where they have a role in this, it's that important. Metaphor, birth of freedom, new birth of freedom. We can see all these reasons for which Reagan or Abraham Lincoln is the most successful president. Repetition, use of we several times thrive. It's repetition. People get some shared knowledge. Everyone knows the Declaration of Independence. So when you talk about it, people say, yeah, I know that. Vision. We in San Diego have a debt to be paid to Father Joe Carroll. He was born and raised, I think, New York. Came out here in the early 70s, and he was ordained. And they were looking for somebody who could take St. Vincent de Paul. And everybody said, Father Joe Carroll, he can raise money. And he was very good at it. He changed St. Vincent de Paul to Father Joe's Villages, to where it is now. And I saw a stat on that one day, and I think it's one of the most successful homeless programs throughout the United States of that type anyway. His goal was to make one-stop shopping, a place where people could find a place to live, to get fed, to be treated decently. His vision was to dream big. That was said at his funeral a couple of years ago. Especially well known for his fundraising ability. Somebody said when the bishop was saying, who can we get to run this program right there? I said, he can get blood out of a turnip. This guy is very, very successful in doing this. And he was. The guy has done so much for San Diego. His vision was to prevent and end homelessness one step at a time. And to that extent, he's been very successful. They have a creed, and the creed is compassion, feeling that everybody is a human being, we're interconnected, respect for that same reason. You should respect each other. Empathy, you should feel their pain. Not only feel their pain, but do something about it. And he's done a lot here in San Diego. Empowerment. Father Emmett and I went there Thanksgiving, I guess, and we were helping out, and I couldn't help but notice people there, or a lot of them were homeless, but they were doing things. They had things to do. And I'm sure they were compensated somewhat, but not a whole lot. But they were empowered to do something. And finally, dignity. This is so important. If people feel like they are worthy children of God, that means an awful lot. Everybody has dignity. Positive attitude. You know, if it weren't for Vietnam, President Lyndon Baines Johnson would be known as one of our greatest presidents. He did an awful lot. Unfortunately, he inherited Vietnam from Kennedy, and he just couldn't escape from that. It was always there. But we forget about the fact that he did so much for the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He had a cook, Zephyr Wright, a black man. And black man, he would motor between Texas and Washington, back and forth. And one day he said, Mr. President, this gets really tough. You know, every time I come up here, in order to go to the bathroom, I have to pull over, go into a field or something, because I cannot use a restroom. I cannot go into a hotel. This struck Lyndon Johnson such that he's going to do something about it. It is added to his desire to do something for civil rights. As a result, he continued Kennedy's plan with the Civil Rights Act to ensure that everybody had the right to vote, ensure that everybody could get an education. You know, I don't know if I should bring this up, but we live in different times. I'm very proud to be an American when I read Johnson wanted to do these things. That's 50 years ago. I just cannot see people, the American people, wanting to do things like this. I'll stop there. Amid fierce opposition from Southern Democrats. Has anybody heard of the Blue Dog Democrats? Blue Dog Democrats are the ones that they opposed the government. They they became Republicans, and that's what it was. And Lyndon Johnson, he had a very, I forget what the role was in the Senate, but he got all these people against him. But he did it. He had a positive attitude to stick with this in order to eventually accomplish this. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, largely because of the attitude of President Lyndon Johnson. Presence. Another word for presence is charisma. When I think, Tom. One comment on Johnson. Yeah, please do. He civil rights, went for the Civil Rights Act would cause him to lose support of the South. And he went ahead anyway. Really do that. Oh, interesting.
Well, you know, and Tom, not just that the Democrats would lose the South, not just him, right?
Yeah.
So like the Democratic Party would never be the same in the South.
Never, yeah. I don't want to embarrass Tom English, but Tom was an advisor to Kennedy as far as nuclear energy. And so Tom knows what he's talking about as far as working with these people. Thanks, Tom. Did you really? He called me up. My son, I want to tell you how proud your country is of you. And I would bravely say, yes, sir. And he would say something else, and I would say, yes, sir. Yeah, interesting background, Tom. Thanks for being here. Okay, when I think of charisma, presence is another word for charisma, by the way. I think of Barack Obama. And it can be argued that a lot of things he achieved were because of the way he portrayed himself. Forceful, confident speaking. I remember at the Democratic Convention the year before he ran. I think that was an introduction to the American people. This guy really knows what he's doing. He had charisma. I think part of that is the way he carried himself. And I think that had an effect. I think part of the reason for that was he was an athlete. He was. He played basketball in high school and everything. And he just had a lot of confidence in himself. And so this contributed to his charisma. Before I go further on this, I'm forgetting. My first commanding officer on a Navy ship, Commander Ted Parker. Commander Ted Parker, he passed away as a vice admiral. He was commanding officer of DLG-8, McDonough. I was on air for 2.5 years in 1968, 69. And I remember I'd be on the bridge. And you knew when Captain Parker would come up to the bridge, because everybody be silent, they felt his presence. And I knew, I might have been the JOD or whatever, conning the ship. And Ted Parker, Bob, I think we want to go up and go alongside that ship up there. And I was trying to figure out, I checked the navigator what course Captain Ted Parker, he's doing it in his head. He was doing trig functions to find out the course he needed to get up there at what speed. This guy had presence. He had charisma. He was a large, tired as a vice admiral. He must have, some other people must have seen this too. But anyway, back to Barack Obama. Two major achievements in civil rights and healthcare, due largely to what he pushed through, was the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I think that argument's not over, but that he's achieved a lot getting people to look at DACA. Because Barack Obama, he should know what he's talking about. Here's a black man who speaks very well, very successful. He could give good information on people acting on that. The other one was the affordable health care, otherwise known as Obamacare. That is a successful. There's a lot of people didn't have health care that have it now because of Barack Obama, with the help of Biden, I'm sure they were there. Other qualities, they might have heard the term gravitas. Gravitas is sort of like charisma, where this guy knows what he's doing and he can get it done. He was master of gravitas as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. And ability to demonstrate feelings. Tragically, during his administration, I think there were a number of shootings where people were, Sandy Hook, I think, happened during Obama. He would get on, address the American people. You could see where he was definitely affected by it. This guy had compassion. He was the charisma. He would relate to that and convey the sorrow of the nation. The other one, I don't remember if you remember that. You know, there was a shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, and he went to the funeral of Reverend Clementa Pinckney. He sang Amazing Grace. Got on the teleprompter and he sang Amazing Grace. Now, this part of the charisma he had, and I think largely made him a very successful president. He enabled achievements, diplomacy, just because he was there. He had the presence, he had the charisma. Very important. Yes, Chris.
So I got to see James Comey speak, and he was the FBI director, you all probably remember. And after he had stepped out of that role, had left that role, forced out of that role, he was speaking and he was talking about President Obama, and he said, because I literally, gave money to the other guy's campaign, so he was like, I wasn't partial to President Obama, but he said he had never met anyone in DC with the charisma of President Obama, and he attributed it to his willingness to genuinely engage and listen to the other person. He said, DC, everybody is thinking about what they're going to say as soon as you stop talking. And he said he was just not that kind of person. He was genuinely taking it in and listening. And his response was based on what you just told him, not what he wanted to tell you. So he just said he struck him very well.
I hadn't heard that. That's the guy. I think that was a large part of the success when you hear him speak now, even when he's being interviewed, God, this guy must have been a great president. He was a great president. I don't know where he ranked in that list, by the way. I'm sure it was fairly high. So he's successful for that reason. Responsibility. This, as I mentioned earlier, the willingness to do the right thing even when no one is looking. The example I chose is actually the parishioners at Our Lady of Guadalupe. Some of you may have been at the demonstration we had last October, November, I think, where Mitsubishi was trying to put a cement transportation facility in. Now, number one, they tried to do it in Barrio Logan because the people in Coronado wouldn't let them do it. The people in other places in San Diego wouldn't let them do it. But these poor people in Barrio Logan, what can they do? They're uneducated. They're not politically involved. But it took somebody wanting to do the right thing. And that's the parishioners at Our Lady of Guadalupe, the parish in Barrio Logan. They lobbied the San Diego Port Authority and the Board of Supervisors. They held candlelight vigil, which some of us attended. This addressed the inability of the community to oppose Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi thought they were going to have a walkover. These people can't do anything. They're not really educated. They're not politically involved. These parishioners from Our Lady of Guadalupe took it upon themselves to do that. Environmental justice, because what they're going to do, it was this, by the way, cement, I think, might be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Granted, this is transportation, but the manufacture of cement. Yeah, and it's just a tremendous amount of, but they can get away with it there because these uninvolved. I'm sorry if I offended anybody who makes cement. It's a fact. Cement just causes a lot of greenhouse gases. Social justice, and again, they Mitsubishi thought they could get away with this because these people don't know a whole lot. We wrote letters to the local newspaper, voiced opposition to this, and marshaled other groups in opposition. San Diego 350 was against it. Creation Care Ministry, Interfaith Coalition. I remember we had meetings on this. I believe I wrote a letter to the union on this. That's part of the things you have to do. Display the willingness to do the right thing, even though the chances of their being successful wasn't that high. But they did it, and they were successful. Mitsubishi went, I don't know where they went. They had another thing to do. Responsibility. A couple other examples. Kurt, yes.
Can I just add something?
Yeah, please do.
So not to take anything away from Our Lady of Guadalupe, because you're right, they were terrific. But I think the Environmental Health Coalition.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're right. You're exactly right.
So they really,
good point.
They should be up there because they did a lot of real
Yep.
organizing
Yep.
and opposition.
You're exactly right. And that's and again, something we can do, and that would be in the area of businesses and organizations. Environmental Health Coalition makes a lot of sense. Doing this, I had a couple other examples. Because this one right here, we're living in a time now, and I don't want to get political, but I will. No, seriously. Please have a seat. There's coffee up there. Help yourself. Glad you're here. A couple other examples dawned on me. Has anybody ever heard of Bob Carey? Bob Carey? He was a Navy SEAL. He won the Medal of Honor. No, this is Bob Carey. He won the Medal of Honor as a SEAL in Vietnam. He came back. He was a governor of Nebraska. He was mentioned as being a candidate for president. I think just didn't have people behind him. He was a non-political guy, and so he didn't get the support. But he always did the right thing. A Navy SEAL, Medal of Honor. He did the right things. He wanted to be. He was a governor, very successful. But he decided not to be president. The other one, and here I might get disagreement, but somebody whom I admire is Al Gore. Al Gore, things would be a lot different today. And Al Gore was a Vietnam veteran. Granted, he served in an office, but he was a Vietnam veteran. And he had a very successful, by the way, aside from An Inconvenient Truth, I'm trying to think of his first book you may or may not have heard of. somebody help me out if you think about it. He wrote a book on value, things the government can do. And anyway, but I've read that book a long time ago. I read Infinite Truth and the follow-on to that. And I thought he should be admired for, if you require back to the election of 2000, hanging chads. Do you remember that? Yeah. Actually, he won the vote in Florida. That we had Sandra Day O'Connor. She did not want to see Al Gore become president. And so she said before she retired, she eventually did, they gave the election to George Bush. Now, again, nothing against George Bush, but it'd be a lot different today if Al Gore would have become president. And the guy, I think, what he has done for the environment, for climate change, is I don't think there's anybody to compare with it. Father Emmett and I went up to I forget what it was an Al Gore not his presentation, but it was Climate Change Reality, and we did it a number of years ago, and it's a movement to get people understanding what Al Gore does, and then promoting that belief. But anyway, responsibility I think is really important. Respect. I mentioned this earlier. If I repeat myself, please forgive me. I'm getting a little bit older and I tend to repeat myself. But this is everyone. We all have the ability to show respect for others in a lesser position. And generally, it's homeless, people that are hungry. We have the ability to show respect, which is driven by our interconnection with all humanity. Other people are humans. That poor person waiting at the intersection wanted a donation, or the homeless person. They walked on San Diego. It's been a number of years since I've worked on there, but people living on the streets. That's something that is a problem, if you will. It's a situation which requires our attention. And I think it's only going to be solved by leadership, somebody willing to do the right thing, in political or not. And that's one of the things we have to look. Migrants, that right there is so. When I see people driven out of their homes, whether it be in Ukraine or in Gaza or here at the border, they generally can't help it. It's deserving of our respect. For those of different spiritual beliefs, I think we all owe it to other people, regardless of what religion they profess. And this is sometimes it's difficult to do, but that's something we have to do. For those in lower socioeconomic position, servers in restaurants, those of you who know me well, we go to a restaurant. I ride bikes with Kevin, and we go to a restaurant. One of the first things I'll do when the server comes by is, "What's your name?" Art. I knew that, Art. Thank you. You got me. No, I asked the server what their name was. And again, they do a double take, and we get better service. You recognize them for doing something that's important. And forgive me if I use this example. I know I gave it the last presentation, but I used to work for the Marine Corps up at Camp Pendleton. I'd go in Vandergrift Gate every day, and my sticker was on the windshield, and I'd go by and I'd pass through, and that was it. One day I said, well, I wonder what would happen. Usually there was a corporal or lance corporal at the gate, the sentry. I said, I wonder what that person would do, a guy or a gal, if I addressed them by their rank. "Morning, Corporal." I got a double take. This person recognized me for what I do. I'm fairly low-ranking enlisted person, but he recognized this is an important thing to do, and made their day. And that's something we can do every day. You do restaurant servers, people that are doing contract work at your house. Find out what their name is and call them by their name. That is one of the things we can do. Those with different political beliefs, sometimes this is hard. This is hard for me very often. I'm sort of a news junkie, and I pretty much I watch the news. I live by myself, so I can watch news, and I do that. And I got to be careful what I say to my daughter when I talk to her, because she's a very non-political person. But I do it, and I have to force myself. Climate change deniers. Father Emmett has run into this a lot. And somebody asked me a couple weeks ago, maybe the last workshop, what do you do when somebody comes up and say, I don't believe this? Oh, why not? Can I tell you that? In fact, incidentally, the reason we're doing this workshop here, about 6 months ago, Phil asked us in the group, is there anybody would like to address the issue of climate change and denial? You might have forgotten this, but I just thought this is a good opportunity to talk about leadership. And right here, again, it's very difficult sometimes to actually have respect for treat people right, but that's something you have to do. Don't yell at them, but to ask them what their opinion is. Those of different political parties, pretty much the same as the first part. And that's a difficult thing to do, but that's something, if we want to get anywhere, we have to realize that people have different things they're looking for, and we should be showing them respect. Finally, but certainly not least, this is a no-brainer for me, empathy. I chosen Pope Francis. Pope Francis, probably more than anybody in public life today, has shown the willingness to accept others, to believe in what they do. When he was a cardinal in Buenos Aires, he would go walk among the poor people, and because he felt what they were going through. And not only that, remember, empathy implies, in addition to compassion, it adds the aspect of doing something. And when he was cardinal there, he implemented his thing. I'm sure most people are familiar with Laudato Si. Creation Care Ministry does a lot of work with Laudato Si, because that was encyclical in 2015. And that's his philosophy. You read through there, and I was astounded. A couple of years ago, and I mentioned earlier, I used to teach courses in sustainable development. And I looked at Laudato Si as I read it for numerous times, and I says, gosh, this is sustainable development. He covers the issue of climate change in the environment portion. He talks about economics, believe it or not. Most of it is about our technocratic society, and we buy things we don't need. And that's two major problems. Number one, we buy things that distract us. You hear a piece on radio the other day, they're running out of storage spaces. People have too many things, too much stuff in their homes, and they go to a storage place. That's the problem right there. Well, when you run out of that space, where does it go? It goes to the landfill. It goes to the landfill, and then eventually it goes out to the garbage patch in the middle of the Pacific. So and one of the things in encyclical is our consumer society, our technocratic society. He hones in on it. But the one that he really gets passionate about is migrants and other people that are in our society that don't have much. To me, that's why I feel so strongly about Laudato Si, because these are the messages that it would be a better world today if we would implement, call it Laudato Si, call it sustainable development. I'm sorry, Christina, I don't care. You're doing the same thing. You work for the environment. You're looking at economics, the way we make things, find things, build things, throw things away, and social equity, how we treat each other. If I were to take one message today, it's something we ought to use our leadership ability to treat each other better. Acceptance of LGBTQ people right here. Somebody asked him about gay people one time, the Pope, and he said, who am I to judge? Boy, the Catholic bishops really got upset with him. And by the way, that's something we're dealing with right now. You got a lot of opposition within the Catholic Church to the message of Laudato Si. They do that because I think a lot of it is, you're not going to tell me what to do, or you want money. You can't get I come from a fairly affluent parish, and I think that motivates a lot of people to not want to get on board on climate change and these other issues. And so they don't accept these things. As far as LGBTQ, similar. A lot of people have ingrained beliefs about these things, and so they will not change the way they believe. It goes back to the issue of respect, but treat people fairly. These are issues reflected in, you may not have heard of this, maybe you did in your parishes, his advocacy of synodality. Synodality is Pope Francis's ways to find out what the people believe in, what they want. What can we do? How can I be a better Pope? How can I improve the Catholic Church for all mankind? And so we had this program, each of our parishes, we met and we discussed issues of synodality. And this shows his willingness to listen to others, and he will do that. And a genuine desire to see their viewpoint. This is what leadership is about. You know, and if you can't see their viewpoint, it's okay. We can all have our different opinions, but don't argue. Don't put people down because they have a different viewpoint. Do your best. Art.
One thing that struck me is very early when he became Pope, a reporter asked him who he was. He said, "I'm a sinner."
Yeah. That's him in a nutshell right there. The guy I hope he lives a long time. He's 86 or 87, but yeah, I personally think he's done more for the Catholic Church than any Pope in a long time. But by the way, and if you haven't read Laudato Si', it's on the internet. We can get you a copy of it, actually. It's something that's well worth the time. And whether you want to call it Laudato Si' or call it sustainable development, I don't care. It's the same message. And a large part of that message is treating people fairly, regardless of who they are. Did you have a question?
I did not.
Okay.
Thank you for asking that.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We've got time here, and yes.
Just a quick comment. Back when you were talking about other religions, I believe that's enshrined in the Constitution.
Oh yeah. This is one of my hot buttons. Church and state. Yeah, it is. Separates church and state. Yet there are a lot of people that want to have. Forgive me. They want a Christian nationalist country. I don't think we should be doing that. I'm a Christian and I believe in it. And if you get everybody on board to do that, it's fine. But you're not. You're not going to. We have other faiths. Yes.
Actually, this is a procedural thing. Can you maybe just ask people online if they can hear?
Oh yeah, thank you.
And then if they can't, maybe you just repeat the question.
Okay. I don't know if you heard Phil ask me. Did anybody hear the question that came from the attendees here? It was that, how about other religions? It's enshrined in the Constitution, isn't it? Church and state. Does anybody have an opinion on that? Maybe not. That's okay.
Well, what somebody just said is they can't hear the question. So I guess the thing is just as we have questions, if you can repeat the question.
Okay.
And then.
Yeah, and if anybody does have a question, I will do that. I'll repeat it so everybody online can hear it.
And we can look for questions in the chat, maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Any other? We have time for a short break, and there's some refreshments there. You might, I think, Phil, do you want to do this now on the breakouts?
No, let's do that after the food. But do you want to take a few more questions, or you want to?
I'm willing to answer questions if anybody wants. Ask anything, discuss anything. Energy. I'm an energy guy. If anybody wants to talk about solar or wind or microgrids, or yes, Tom.
Said on Laudato Si', there would not have been a Laudato Si' other than for the efforts of a Hindu, okay, from UCSD, who dragged a bunch of his buddies over to Rome to meet the proposal and talk about it.
Well, I think Tom, just to be factual, I think that there was some influence, but they were working on that from the time that Pope Francis took over the papacy. I heard Cardinal McElroy and Cardinal Turkson talking about it and presenting on it in April, and they said it took a year of working on it. I think it certainly was influential, but I don't think that. I think that he literally came into the papacy and had that goal. They said from the get-go. But I think it certainly helped that Dr. Ramanathan from UCSD engaged and was able to help with that. So
the discussion we've just had for those online here was the role of Dr. V, I'm not going to try to say his first name, Ramanathan from Scripps Research Institute. Several years ago, we did a workshop here, and here's Dr. Ramanathan, I believe he's Hindu. He said the most important document on climate change that he knows of is Laudato Si. And Dr. Ramanathan is probably asked somebody, he's probably top 3, 4, 5 people in the world on climate change. And he was very influential. I think what Tom was referring to was a meeting of the Pontifical Science Academy on before Laudato Si, and that influenced it very much. So it's not just a religious document. It's a very well put together document on a lot of issues. Yes.
You opened up a little more than I thought you were going to, but there's a nuclear energy production cycle that uses the material that you put into it. It doesn't leave extra. It uses it up, and if anything happens, it goes down. The cycle is set up so that it will not expand, whether it goes down. Bill Gates's book goes into that, and he's actually invested in it. I don't know if we're going to get, commercially available, but I hope we do.
One of the people in the audience here brought up the fact that there's some technologies in nuclear now that are devoted. Do you remember the name of the company? I used to know it. They have a source that doesn't leave any waste. And if it fails, it fails without leaving anything behind. And Bill Gates is a big financer of this, and I think it's a good way to go. Except I'm sure it's expensive. And I think nuclear is an attention-getting word. When people hear about that, they get concerned about it. I don't know if you've been following the issue with the Russians wanting to put a nuclear satellite, and it scares the hell out of me. Sorry. Anyway, other questions? Yes, Father.
Kind of formulated a question. I think there's probably 1,000 answers to it. With everything you've said, with us who work on creation care, environmental, climate change, what would you say is the most recommended type of leadership? I mean, I guess it applies to everything you said. Is there a missing link that you see somewhere why we're not gaining more ground in people's mentalities and their responses to what we're trying to do?
If I were to, that's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. If I were to give you an answer, I was just thinking this morning or yesterday. Oh yeah, Father Emmett just had a question. Say, out of all the issues we have, and we know there's a lot of challenges now environmentally and with regard to the environment. What is the most important characteristic that I would like to see displayed? And without a doubt, I was saying this yesterday, this morning, it's responsibility. Why I look at my government today, and I can speak up, I can write letters, I can do these things. I'm retired. I'm not worried about angering anybody, but people in positions of authority now will refuse to do the right thing. I'll get a little political right here. One of the reasons we're not supporting Ukraine, I think it's tragic what's happening right now, is because they won't pass some legislation to support Ukraine. That right, it's gonna hurt us. We have to do the right thing, and we're not right now. Yes, ma'am. No, I'd be glad to do that. We have time to do that right now. I think that's a good idea. I'm going to go around and somebody tell me what they do, and I'll repeat it to the people online. Phil.
Okay, so I'm Phil Petrie. I'm the co-chair person of the Interfaith Coalition for Justice and very active with San Diego 350. And I'm here because I'm one of the organizers of the event, but I also really wanted to hear Bob speak. And I think leadership is an essential issue.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Do you want to paraphrase that?
No, that was Phil Petrie. He was explaining, he's the head of the ICEJ, and I know he's very much involved in all the issues we've been talking about.
My name's Grayson. I'm a current junior at Xavier University right now, studying education. I do actually a lot of leadership stuff with the university, so a lot of the stuff that you've been presenting about, like we really kind of we do a lot with that with our leaders, and as like upperclassmen, we each of the younger students have to do that. So it's been cool to kind of see the stuff that I've learned also in the presentation. And my mom's an education person with public.
It's going to be hard for me to repeat it, but Grayson's, I'll mention his, but he's a young person. We need young people. Everybody in here is older than Grayson, and I wonderful. Thanks for contributing that. Christina?
Not a young person today. I direct our creation care ministry for the Catholic Diocese of San Diego. My background, I did academic research focusing on the social impact of environmental degradation, and especially looking at human movement and potential for political destabilization. And then just love to work with this team. It's amazing.
Thank you, Christina. And Art Simpson is a retired architect, so is Kevin. And Art very often writes emails to everybody. He's a big proponent of getting rid of fossil fuels. Anything you want to add to that, Art?
Well, in general, I wish I had this course 10 years ago, because I'm a lousy leader, but the Holy Spirit asked me to start a world peace movement. The theory was, or as I understood, the theory was get rid of fossil fuels because it causes war, it causes all kinds of problems. And so initially, I did all the research that I could do to learn what the problem was. And I found out that fossil fuel use was not good, as you know, all know. And the thing was, I started thinking that we have to do something very important right away because people are dying. And as a leader, that wasn't a good way to lead, because people said, you know, that's a little extreme here, fellas. People aren't going to listen to you. Well, it took me a long time, and finally Father Emmett helped me by, he doesn't know this, he helped me a lot by giving me a spiritual way to approach it, meaning that you plant seeds. He said the bishop told him to plant seeds. I was disdainful of that at the time, because I thought, we got to get out there and do the battle because people aren't. Anyway, I virtually went very nowhere because of my attitude, and my passion and everything was going in the wrong direction. Now, as I say, I didn't have any, I'm not a good leader. And as I learned here today, why a lot of that. Now, I'm very interested in love and grace. Amen. Our leader is really Jesus. Amen. And I'm tuned in more today to love and grace and approaching all issues with that. And it's 10 years have been an education for me. I think I converted to learning how to deal with these things in life in a much better way. So hopefully I can be an example and do better in the future.
You already are, Art. Thank you. And Rita is our representative. Rita, tell us a little bit about yourself from San Diego 350.
So I grew up in the Rochester, Buffalo, New York, Niagara Falls area. I worked for the Social Security Administration for 45 years. When I retired, I was looking around for something meaningful. and I saw San Diego 350 was having a March for Climate. At that point, I didn't know anything about climate change or social movements. So I learned quite a bit as I went through. I've been working with San Diego 350 for 5 years now.
Good for you.
When I worked for Social Security in San Diego, there were 60% of our workload was with the homeless.
Oh, interesting.
So I understand what the challenges are. So basically with San Diego 350, I'm one of the leaders of the transportation team and the South Bay.
Oh, thank you, Rita. It's for those of you who don't know, San Diego 350, its name comes from the concentration in the atmosphere of carbon dioxide. It's 350. Now, right now, it's about 420. Right. So this is the national group headed up by Bill McKibben in Vermont, and very, very important issue. Tom.
I give a lot of speeches, mostly on climate change and extinction of species. And these are focused towards rednecks. You know, they're the ones that you can actually move. So anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about this latest talk I have. I'll give you flyers if anybody wants it. But basically, I've been working on a computer at MIT, a computer that's a climate change computer, and came up with a plan that solves both the climate crisis. Well, I mean, solves it. I mean, economically, it's beautiful. In terms of all the environmental bells and whistles, it all works. And it simultaneously solves the mass extinction of species problem.
When is that? When is it? The speaker that.
Well, the basic program is environmental stuff. This thing is what that thing, and we go to something else, and that feedback, and this thing way over here. And so if you start trying to do it on your own, you can basically just solve one segment of stuff. You isolate it, you show that work out, and then maybe if your goal is another segment over here. This is a global model with all the things that's been done. And it's been tested by about 30 years by all the experts that use it for IPCC, that sort of thing. One of the guys who recommends it is John Kerry, who the president envoy for climate. Another guy who recommends it is John Holdren. He was Obama's science guy for about 8 years.
Will be carried virtually, Tom?
When will you present? Are you presenting on it?
Well, yeah, my first presentation will be on 12th at the United Nations Association.
What date?
Message out to you another once. If you want me to come and give a talk, I'll do it. It costs you some coffee.
Okay. Speaking there was Tom English, who has a great deal of experience in he was an advisor to Kennedy on nuclear power, and he's giving a presentation on climate change March 12th.
Yeah.
If anybody's interested, contact me and I'll make sure you get an invitation. Okay.
I'll be on Zoom with the United Nations.
Okay. Good. Thank you. And Kevin, my bike riding friend.
And I met Bob riding bikes, and we're good friends. From what he has to say. This is your wife, Julie.
Hi, I'm Julie. Same here. Kevin showed me the invitation, and I've also gone on bike rides with Bob and the group. And I read about it, and I said, "Well, okay, development sustainability, which is always Kevin's, forte and specialty." And I said, "Well, would you like to come?" I said, "Well, yeah, because obviously I share the same passion as all of you here, not at the level where you guys are, from involvement space, but just wanting to learn more and seeing more of what's out there, because frankly, I'm scared to death. You know, we've got, you know, we have 5 grandchildren. Some of them are over in England, the others are here, but I look at, you know, what's happening in our country with, you know, what you're talking about here, people's beliefs and refusal to look at facts and recognize them and accept them or try to figure out a solution, you know, that nobody is working together. And so this has been very interesting.
Julie, Kevin, thanks for being here. And is it Vicky? Okay.
Well, by profession, I'm a social worker. I've worked primarily with the chronically mentally ill in my work. I'm getting towards retirement, but I've always been a passionate lover of the environment and people, particularly those that are more disadvantaged in our world. So it's just, I'm not really an official member of any organization in particular. I work with 350.org sometimes, you know, and just kind of go and do what I can in that respect in San Diego. So I'm here just to connect with other people that are like-minded and doing this kind of work. And I'm really grateful for learning more about what people are doing here. Connecting with this group. So.
Thank you. You're among like-minded friends. Yes.
My name is Don Norcross. By profession, I'm a journalist. I was a sports writer for the Union Tribune for 30 years.
Oh, really?
Still freelancing. And I was very blessed to go to a very diverse high school and played a lot of sports with diverse athletes. And I've always had a soft spot in my heart for those who are less fortunate. And then as far as the environment is concerned, I have some selfishness there. I have 6 grandsons, and I want the world to be a better place for them.
Right. Good point. Thank you. Father.
I am a Farrell. I'm a retired deputy priest. That's a joke. In 2017, I started to volunteer. Now we have about 10 really well-educated volunteers, and we have Christina as a champion here, as the director of the office here in this building. But Georgetown came out to jumpstart and work on the Laudato Si in some of the areas of the country, and they picked San Diego as one of them. And a little bit I knew about it at that time. I said to the bishop, I said, well, let's at least somebody from San Diego, Canada, everybody from Georgetown. He said, who? I said, well, that guy that it's hard to pronounce his first name, Ramanathan. I said, he's on the Academy of Science in the Vatican. Let's get him over. And so he did. He came and spoke. Anyway, I walked into the office a couple weeks later and said, I'm going to start a ministry on that and start going around and giving talks. And now it's been built up quite a bit, especially since Christina has come on the job. She has vision and she's working with all levels and in the country, I should say. So it's grown a lot since we started in 2017 to now.
Thank you, Father. Yes, gentlemen.
My name's John. My brother John he's kind of a political activist. I come from originally a very kind of conservative family, but you know, me and my brothers are a lot more liberal. Well, except for one of them is pretty conservative. So we're trying to do NBC and how to communicate with people non-violently from other cultures and religions and stuff like that, because our family was very hierarchical, you know, father knows best kind of, you know, and religious, you know, I mean, just being, you know, loyal to faith and stuff like that. So it's pretty diverse with all the different religions here in the United States and dealing with different people. So we've been, you know, trying to play around with the idea of how to, you know, just communicate with different people from different groups in a way that's non-abrasive, and also we're both extremely concerned with the environment, because you know, John's like a physicist, so he understands all the what's happening with the atmosphere and everything, and so he's very concerned about climate change also. So those are the 2 issues, politics and climate change, that we're trying to sort out and figure out how to be better global citizens.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Hopefully we said some things that might
Yeah,
Can I help you?
totally. Yeah, all
Good.
that stuff, information really helps, and I was gonna bring a notebook, but I forgot. But I'll try to figure out how I can get it access.
We have a recording, by the way. It will be available. Okay, Patricia.
Grace, I'm a member of the Care for Creation team, and I don't think so. Interesting. I boss.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. Yes.
My name is Susan, and I'm a surgical intensive care nurse by education and practice. And I'm here today because when I saw that it was a leadership conference, I wondered, I mean, everyone is a leader. Everyone, even the lowest person in the universe, it is not a low person to the person next to him who needs his life saved or needs care. Just reach a hand out to help someone. So I find it interesting to hear all of you say what you are leaders in and what your leadership qualities are, because I can take that home with me and think about and other people that I care for as well.
I'm sure nobody heard that, but she makes a very good point, and I think it's one of the major takeaways I see today. Everybody is a leader. There's opportunities every day in our life. Yes, one final one.
Russ Finch, and I got into this path. Sorry, about 8 years ago I had a stroke, and sometimes my Broca's region just doesn't. I'm also trained as in physiology, so when I was in college, I took a course on environmental chemistry. And at that point, you can guess it was a few years ago, there was a gentleman at Scripps that had a research station set up in Hawaii on Mauna Loa. And he was recording the gases in the atmosphere. And he noticed that CO2 seemed to be going up. And he took data from the couple centuries before, which isn't as accurate, but you can, using statistical methods, you can find out things about it. And he found out that CO2 is going up, and he charted it and saw that it went up with the industrialization. So since then, I've been following it and, seeing a lot of the evidence that came out and all the oil industry misinformation that was put out. And then about a year ago, I guess, I was laying in bed and thinking, what can I do? What can I do? Well, the one little candle, we have double pane windows, we have 2 electric cars, we have solar panels. And then I thought, what else can I do? And our church, St. Dunstan's, is right across the street from Patrick Henry High School. And I thought, well, what if we had something that incentivized the students to learn about climate change? So I thought, well, let's start a scholarship program. They have to write papers, and we'll give them, and I found out later that this is quite a bit of money, 5,000 first prize, 3,000 second prize, 1,000 third prize. So one of the meetings I had with teachers there, since setting this up, they said, the students already know, and they blame us. We're the ones that let it happen.
You're right.
And so anyway, long story short there, it ended up not going anyplace, although we did have, the first iteration of it. But anyway, that's where I'm at. Yeah, we gave two $200 scholarships because they submitted something.
The gentleman that just spoke was talking about how he got involved in climate change, and I don't know if he visited in Hawaii, but he knew that it was Charles Keeling that did the measurements on Mauna Loa, and that's where he measured at the time. It was 280 parts per million, and now we stand at 420 parts per million. So there's a lot more to be done. Phil.
So, Bob, I wonder if you could just maybe stop share and see if those folks want to share why they're here. If they're still on, because. And I would like to apologize to people for maybe any quirks.
You're gonna
front of the code. It's tricky.
Do you see anything in the chat or Q&A?
No.
Also,
Thank you.
Nothing in the chat right now.
Share. And I will make sure their volume is nice and high. Oh, yay. Okay, so John, I can see you there. And why don't I'll just go ahead and ask you to go ahead and share, and we'll see if it's loud enough for everybody to hear.
Okay, hi everybody. This is John Mishno.
Hi, John.
Hi, Bob. Good to see you.
Good to see you also.
Hi, Christina. And hi, Phil. I can hear you. And I came, this just seemed like a really wonderful opportunity to learn and practice these leadership skills. And when I read the agenda that you had published, Bob, I just thought, wow, I really want to be able to not just understand those skills, but also to learn how to embody them and kind of keep them as a roadmap in my mind when I'm working with partners to work on climate change and anything in my life. So I really appreciate you offering this class.
Thank you, John.
Awesome. Ellen, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about why you came.
Sure. Hi, my name is Ellen Pennington. I am in Houston, Texas, and I've been employed as an environmental consultant for about 6 years now. My background in college was in ecological restoration, but I think having been in the consulting industry and some of the projects I've been working on, I think it over time has revealed to me it's not really the main career path I want to be on, and I've just now started becoming aware of all of these additional initiatives that exist, like sustainable development, environmentally conscious or socially conscious, like investment groups, and just all these different things, and how it's there's a lot out there that I was not aware of when I was in college. And so I've been thankful to have been able to participate in some leadership classes and my own faith background. And when I saw this one with sustainable development and servant leadership, I was like, oh, this is the next thing. I really want to see what this workshop is about and continue to connect to more organizations, I think, like this one. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Marilyn, Dr. Marilyn, would you like to speak?
Sure. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, I think the other speakers have pretty much echoed my reasons for tuning in today as well. We have a small group, and I wish more people in our parish would become involved in our Laudato Si group. So I thank you very much for your suggestions and your insights. I like looking at other leaders, and how they have moved us and touched us. So that's one of the reasons I'm tuning in, is I hope that I can use some of the principles to encourage others to get involved. I think it's very rewarding, really.
Great. Thanks, Marilyn. The last person is a phone call with the last 4 digits, 4874.
Christina, can you hear me?
Yes. Everybody can hear you. I have you on the big screen.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm sorry. I had to shut down the laptop. This is Kathleen Avina. I'm listening from Oceanside, California. I was enrolled by Father Emmett into creation care with studying Laudato Si starting back in 2017. And it has been a wonderful trip for me. I was involved at St. Thomas More for several years, and then have had to move a couple of times. And now I am in Oceanside, California, and slowly but surely working with Father Ray at St. Mary's Star of the Sea Parish, as well as Principal England at the school to accomplish different things for the youth and the parents and the children.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen. Well, Bob, I'll let you, is the plan, how long is our break?
Phil, take 5 minutes, 10 minutes max. Use restroom, have a cup of coffee. Phil, you got to set up for break, please.
Okay, so we'll report back, and we're going to do, go into some breakout groups and have time in the breakout, and then come back and share out from our breakout experience. If you're on the Zoom, we'll put you all into one group.
I'll do that.
And I'm going to let Phil take over from here.
Yeah. Great. I'm going to talk to you. So I'll just tell you all that take a little break right now, get yourself some food, and in a minute, I'm going to join you on my tablet, and we can have one breakout and decide which topic to deal with. So go get some food, enjoy yourself. Okay, Christina. Yes. The other thing is we can put on this those instructions that I gave. So we just have that posted. I don't know
I don't have those.
I shared it with you, so it would be.
I know, I was just gonna say, I have to pull them up. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna mute us.
It's not necessary.
Sorry, I just realized that we might be in a breakout room. Is everybody back or are we waiting?
See, how do I get? Oh, Phil Petrie will gather you in a breakout room.
Myself. Let me just get myself some water. I'll be right back. All right. So, have people been able to kind of take a little bit of a break and get some food, stretch? If you're there, so I'm going to go get my cheat sheet. I have a little cheat sheet, which I meant to bring with me anyway. Actually, it's in the chat. Let me just see if I can watch you guys and look at the chat at the same time. Yeah, but it's right in the way. I don't like that. Okay, I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm with the people online. Yeah. Okay. First, I just want to apologize for some bumps in terms of kind of doing this online and in person. It's tricky, and we probably needed a mic and probably other tech stuff, and it's all beyond my level of expertise, I'm afraid. But anyway, so I would ask those of you that are here, and if Christina will not be because she'll be leading a group of real folks, but if you could just put your video back on. And if you can't put the video back on, I guess just unmute yourself. All right, so I think we've got some video feed and we've got everybody unmuted. Super. Okay. You know, we've actually done the introduction, so I don't know that we have to do that. But let me just explain what we're going to try to do with this, with the breakout group. First, we're supposed to choose a presenter who will kind of present to the whole group. And I'm fine with deferring to somebody else here. Would somebody else like to be the presenter? And then when we come back together, you'll be, of course, presenting on the big screen, but it's not very elaborate. It would just be kind of summarizing, keeping notes of what we discussed and summarizing what we discussed in something like a 3-minute soundbite thing. Okay, I don't see any volunteers, so I'm going to just make myself the presenter. So
thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to take that role on. In the chat, can everybody access the chat? Because in the chat, we have kind of the instructions of what we're going to try to do here. And especially it's the topics, because we need to decide which of those we're going to tackle. Maybe we can tackle 2, but I kind of doubt it. We're going to do this till about 20 after 3. So we've got about 22 minutes or something like that. Raise your hand if you can access the chat. Just see a show of hands. Or do the symbol, give us the little symbol.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. This is Marilyn, and I'm apologizing because there's something wrong with my Zoom now. My picture doesn't show up. I have to get some help with that, but I can't do it today.
That's fine. Don't worry about it. That's cool.
Thank you.
We appreciate that. Okay, and there's still the caller that's on 4874. Are you able to look at the Zoom? I mean, the chat?
I can't access the chat. I had to shut down my laptop. Is it okay if I just listen in?
Sure. That is fine. Absolutely. So Ellen, you have your hand up.
Yes, I actually had raised it for the instruction, but I also noticed the recording is still going for like the overall live stream. Is this intended to be recorded to the breakout room part?
So, you know, I think it is being recorded. I guess it's probably us that's being recorded. You want me to stop that? Because I can stop that.
Okay.
What would people prefer? I'm fine with stopping it.
I think it's better freewheeling.
I'm sorry?
I think it's better to stop it since we're kind of freewheeling our thoughts here.
Okay, I'll just have to remember to.
I went to high school in Coronado, and we are at Sacred Heart Parish. And I remember we were invited by Our Lady of Guadalupe to go see their grounds and do something with their youth group. And we got there, and it was me, my sister, and like 2 other people. And we got back, and we were like, why didn't anybody else come? And a lot of people were like, well, they're just way too different than us. And I was like, they're the closest parish to us. They're just right across the water. But it was that like geographic barrier that it was like, no, we're wealthy and, you know, we're fortunate and they don't have that much stuff. But, you know, as Bob did in our presentation, like they do so much for their community. They're always like celebrating. Their masses are like so much fun because they're like clapping and having fun. And I was like, why can't every church do this? But that just shows you that like that's something really important to them. And they're showing us like our garden that they do a lot with. They have a migrant shelter, so there's a lot of outreach. I'm also biased because they're Jesuit, and so Xavier's Jesuit, and so you know they have a lot of like great values. So I think that was really important. 1 more minute. Okay. I'll try to go faster. Then we talked about like how a lot of this kind of, you know, a lot of people want to be like, okay, our education system, they need to teach, you know, more diverse topics. And I was saying it's really hard because I'm an education major and there's a lot of like, there's standards, there's, you know, you have pressure from the board, but who also gives the board the power? The government. And it's kind of hard because it funnels down. And, you know, I always say like, if teachers had all this power, there'd be so much different things taught in a classroom. But it's because of this hierarchy system that you don't kind of get that at that teacher level. And it's really hard to like create these lessons that include everybody. So I was telling a story how I did a lesson the other week, and it was, I had students write a response to Lord Dunmore, who was the governor of Virginia during the Revolutionary era. And I had them think about either being a colonist, a loyalist, or an enslaved person. And I think just by opening that up to the idea of what would have you have thought about the Revolutionary War as a slave, and it really challenged them to just think differently and think about like, would you have wanted that or would you have not wanted that? So I think even those little things that teachers can do, or if, you know, you're teaching your kids or grandkids, you know, just kind of thinking about even that additional perspective opens up for so much conversation. We had like a really great conversation, and these guys were 13, 14 years old. So yeah, it's definitely possible. So yeah, I did.
Hi, my name's Don Norcross. Our group worked on the challenge of homelessness. And one idea that we came up with was for someone to rent a hall somewhere, could be downtown or wherever, and to have experts come and, you know, speak here and, you know, announce obviously that you're putting on this presentation and, you know, invite a lot of people there. And these people would be, you know, directors that have expertise on multiple, you know, parts of one of the problems with homelessness. Could be, you know, those who are experts in drug abuse, you know, mental illness, and, you know, or obviously there are a lot of people that become homelessness for financial reasons. And then Art came up with, to me, the absolute best idea in terms of, you know, dealing with homelessness. And that is, what's the biggest challenge that we have? Okay. And that's the housing. Okay. Well, property obviously in San Diego County is outrageously expensive. Okay. So where do we build? Okay. And his idea, build on existing property. Okay. We have parking structures. Okay. Can build up from those parking structures, and they don't have to be obviously 10 stories or something like that.
Parking lots.
Parking lots. Okay, my bad.
Streets.
Okay, parking lots and streets. And again, you've got existing land, okay? And there's a heck of a lot of parking lots throughout all of San Diego. And if you just go up 1 story, 2 story, that could be, you know, a lot of housing there. You're an architect by trade, and I thought that, you know, sometimes when problems are solved and they come up with that, sometimes it seems like the simplest solution. Sometimes it's so obvious that it's just like this light goes off. Okay, so I just thought that was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, the land costs are 2/3 of the cost, maybe more. So you eliminate the cost. Right.
So a big tip of the hat to Art. I thought that was just a fantastic idea. And I'm welcoming the other people in my group to speak up or, you know, mention any ideas that we had that I didn't cover. I guess we're covering.
Hello, my name is Patricia Grace, and I'm summarizing what happened in our group. Our group was the immigration refugees crisis that's taking over the world right now. We were asked in 20 minutes to solve a problem that over the last 200 years, maybe 2,000 years, we've never solved. And we continue. But I was struck by how much we wanted to solve it, how much human compassion sat around our table. And we wanted to solve this problem because it's huge. We can't even really get numbers on the numbers of refugees or migrants or people roaming the world looking for safety. And even as I say it, there are tears behind my voice They're roaming the world looking for safety. Imagine what that would be like. So in our 20 minutes, though, we focused first on what can we do for people who are arriving. We recognized that there are multiple agencies in San Diego, a very popular port in the US. There are many agencies doing this work, and our work would have to start with learning what those agencies are doing and how we can offer some assistance to them. So we want to give a shout out to those folks who are working hard already to do it. We recognized a major problem from our own experiences is acculturation. People come, they're here, they don't know the language, they don't know how you access social services, they don't, and everybody needs a social worker and a lawyer. Would you all agree? I mean, this is complex. This whole system is complex. People need it, and we want to give it to them. So we would begin there. Who's doing it? What can we do to assist? Because people need help finding housing, finding jobs, getting their kids into school, learning the rules of US culture, which are different than the rules of other cultures. I don't know if anyone's ever lived in other cultures, but they, it's based on the place where you live. People need to learn those rules. Okay, so we focus somewhat on the newly arrived. And that conversation, remember, we had 20 minutes. That conversation led us to thinking about, as a group, thinking about people who aren't newly arrived, people who are here. How do we create a welcoming culture? We don't have a welcoming culture. We have a way of pushing it away. I think Grayson was highlighting that as well. Anybody who looks different, talks different, walks different, anything different, we immediately set up some kind of a barrier around it. Now, I can hear all of my girlfriends say it's biological, and then I have to have a lecture on biology. I understand that, but we're not operating out of a reptile brain. We have a brain that can say to us, there's another way to do this. Let's find that other way, and let's live in peace and harmony. And I've joined Art now in the let's just love and live and follow our Lord. Amen. Amen.
We have one more group? No. That's it. Okay, good. Well, I would like to thank everybody for participating today. I mean, I learned a lot. I think somebody asked earlier if, what do I think the most important? I don't know if there is a most important leadership characteristic, but I actually had two of them. And the one is responsibility, doing the right thing. I don't know why that's, well, I do know why it's difficult because, and I share this with my bike riding friends a lot. One advantage of getting older is that you're not beholden to anybody as far as your opinions. You come out and say what you think is true. Call it wisdom, if you will. There's one consolation. Everybody is getting older, everybody except Grayson, of course, but there is an advantage where we learn. We're here today to learn about these things, and I think we've all made good things. And what's more, I think we've heard things people actually believe in. Because who are you going to upset? You're not going to upset anybody. You don't have an employer. You don't have to worry about it. So I would like to thank everybody for coming here, being so giving of their opinions. I hope I learned a lot. I hope everybody else does learn a lot. Anybody have any comments themselves?
There's some announcements.
Yeah, Phil. Time for enough. Yeah, and that's, Rita does want to.
And Rita. And
yeah.
Well, first of all, again, super thanks to Bob. I thought this was really excellent. Bob is the mover and shaker on this. So I'll keep these short because I know we have a time constraint. But as I said, I'm with the Interfaith Coalition for Justice, and we do a number of activities, and we have a number of things that are coming up. I'll send you more information. Did everybody here actually register for this event so that I should have your emails? No, a couple people didn't. So maybe make sure to see me afterwards and I'll get your emails. Because I'll send all this stuff to you and the link to the registration page. So I'll just hit these very quickly. We're going to have a demonstration, a kind of a mock funeral and bank protest in Solana Beach. This is in April. It's April 5th. That's a Friday. We'll be there from 1 to 2:30. And we're going to go from Citibank to Bank of America right on Loma Santa Fe. And then we're also going to go into Mission Federal Credit Union and say, you guys don't invest in fossil fuels. Good on you. So that's happening. Please join us for that. That should be a lovely event. Rita's going to talk about some 350 stuff. So the only other thing I want to bring out is there is a campaign afoot right now that probably some of you already know about, run by Power San Diego, which is to fire SDG&E, not to put too fine a point on it, and replace them with public power for the city of San Diego. This is before our electricity. We are down to, I think they need to collect 80,000 signatures plus by about May 12th, May 15th or so. So really there's only about 2 months left and still a lot to be collected. I was just at Vaughn's yesterday and collected whatever that was, 18 or something like that. If you are interested in taking a petition around, I have petitions with me today. So this is something very concrete you could do. It's not everybody's gift, I know that, but it can actually be pretty fun. And my opening line was, how do you feel about SDG&E? And even the people that didn't sign would sort of laugh about that. So anyway.
And that's City of San Diego though, correct?
That is City of San Diego, just City of San Diego. Absolutely. So if you're interested in that, please come see me afterwards. And I'm going to turn it over to Rita, and she's going to tell you a little bit about some of the 350 things that are coming up. And then we will wrap it. You know, one other thing I'm going to do while Rita's coming to the podium, this is just a sign up for our newsletter, the Interfaith Coalition for Justice. We put out newsletters about 6 times a year. That's the main way we get our events out. So let me just send this around. If you're not already on this, we would love to have your information. So let me just start that there and let me just send it along.
Hi, my name is Rita Clement, and I am volunteering with San Diego 350. I have 2 requests today. One concerns our Youth v. Oil, and I passed around this little flyer. I have many more of these. If you would like one, please let me know. It's a free, family-friendly event, and it has to do with oil setbacks. So in 2022, our state legislature and our governor signed this into law. It's called Senate Bill 1137. However, as soon as the oil companies found out, they raised $20 million and convinced people using misinformation to sign enough petitions to get this on the November ballot. So what our group is trying to do is convince people to vote in November to keep this Senate Bill 1137. So you'll see it on the November ballot. And our event is going to be in Balboa Park at Centro Cultural de la Raza. And it's 2004 Park Boulevard. And we're hoping that people will come themselves and also bring family members and friends. We're trying to build a movement so that people vote in November to keep this Senate bill. And the whole purpose of the Senate bill is to prevent new oil drilling infrastructure next to homes, hospitals, daycares, places of business. And right now, I'm sure you've been to Kern County or Los Angeles, and you've seen pictures of the oil drilling right next to a person's backyard. So those people are suffering from asthma, cardiac issues, preterm births, all because of oil drilling. So I invite you to come to this event. Do you have the question?
Yeah, what's the setback?
How many feet?
Oh, the setback is only 3,200 feet. It's roughly a mile. And health research shows that it should be 6 miles away. But this is a small step in the right direction. So the setback for new oil drilling is 3,200 feet. And the youth are putting this on. They have quizzes, interactions. They'd really like to have people come. The second ask that I have is that I'd like to make an appointment with Christina to talk about it more. But there's a public employment and retirement committee in this state assembly. And what we're trying to do is get the CalSTRS and the other retirement program to divest from fossil fuels. And so we have the Diocese of San Diego is the first diocese to divest from fossil fuel investments. So when I let my brothers and sisters know across the country that the Diocese of San Diego had done this, they said maybe they'd start talking at their own churches and see if they could get their diocese to divest from fossil fuels. So there's a bill called Senate Bill 252. And the people on that committee are Tina McConnor, Dave Cortese, Laura Friedman, Stephanie Wynn, and Pilar Chavo. And we're hoping that we can get the word out so that people start calling. But the most important thing we need help with, there's a person on this committee that accepts a lot of fossil fuel money. And he's a devout Catholic. So we're trying to figure out who in the diocese here in San Diego could help us. So that's why I wanted to make an appointment with Christina. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank everybody here. I think immediately, you know, I kind of feel this kinship. It's wonderful to know that others are engaged. I think faith-based climate action or environmental action can sometimes be a little awkward. You're either the only religious person in the environmentalist or the only environmentalist in your religious group. So like we got to stick together. And I really appreciate your coming out here, and I hope we can go and you all have events that we can attend as well. I know that a lot of this interfaith partnership has really helped us move the needle. Certainly here in our diocese, a lot thanks to Father Emmett, but have a great weekend. Thank you to Bob again. Bob is one of our strong presenter. We're really blessed with an amazing team. Father Emmett put together a team. When I took the job, I was like, wow, we can do anything. So we just are, happy to expand out and be in relationship with all of you as well. So thank you for coming. Thank you to Bob. Thank you to Phil, who really was behind the scenes, pulling all this stuff, doing a million miles an hour to make sure. Thank you to everybody that joined us also online. I'm glad we had Ellen and Grayson as our young people, representing the youth.
Does anybody else want to say something? Yes.
Yeah, I mentioned before that, who's the guy head of Microsoft?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yeah, I remember it again. He wrote a book about 6-8 years ago, and he outlined all the major problems with CO2 in the atmosphere. Yeah. An example is cement. Producing cement, by definition, the chemical reaction releases CO2. And there is a process by which it wouldn't release CO2. You have to use different chemicals and different heating regimes, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, that book is a fairly complete description of what we can do. The second thing is Elon Musk, a great scientist, a horrible science guy. But he put out, and this, I just downloaded it like a week ago, again, a complete analysis of how to overcome our situation with CO2. And it's about that thick. It gets into a lot of detail. It quotes a lot of professional organizations, you know, where his numbers come from. And he talks about how we can decarbonize our complete environment.
Can you send the titles both, especially when Elon Musk? I've read the book. The book is excellent by Bill Gates.
Yes.
But if you'd send that to myself or Christina or Phil, we'll see the other people get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing is, actually, Dr. English, Tom, could you also send your flyer info to me digitally or to Phil, and then Phil can send it to everybody?
The link.
Sure. Can I just?
Yeah, the link.
You know, the digital, because then I'll just like send it in mass.
Good.
I think a lot of people will definitely want to see it.
Resources.
Yes, Art.
And I do have one more thing.
It's been great being here with all of you. I have to go to the restroom.
And if I could, also before you head, we have plastic can go in the recycle. That's the blue. Anything metal can go in the blue as well. If it's food waste or paper waste, it goes in the green. Even though I think these cups may be compostable. Did you bring that?
No, I got it from over there.
Okay. Wait a minute. Maybe Father Emmett put them out.
Yeah, Father Emmett.
And this building should be compostable, but if it is a rigid compostable, it doesn't decompose at the same rate. You all probably know this. So it doesn't go in the green, it goes in the black, but it should break down faster. So thank you for just disposing of everything properly. Yeah, that will go in the black. Yes, if you have a question, just ask me and I'll make sure we put it in the right spot. Anything paper in the green, recycle, and then anything rigid or just wait until it's in the black.
Christina walks the talk.
You guys hear me? I'll just say goodbye and I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you all so much for coming. Bye-bye. Okay,